Welcome to the Octopod. I'm Kyle Davis, head of the Office of the CTO. Join us as we dive into the latest technologies and trends shaping business. Whether you're a tech enthusiast, a business leader, or just looking to stay ahead in the digital age, this podcast is for you. Let's unlock opportunities with technology together. Let's jump in.
We have a really special edition for you today where we're joined by experts in the retail sector to talk about the trends that are impacting retail. So team, can you introduce yourself to everyone, please?
Thank you. Yes, I'm Ian Scott. I'm an independent retail consultant, and I'm fortunate to travel the world looking at the developments, trends, and innovations in the retail space and sharing it with people.
And I'm Peter Critchley. I'm the UK CEO for Trison, who digitise the physical spaces and places for retailers across the globe.
I'm Jane Liston. I head up the retail vertical at CDW and run our sales team here. My role is really about how we support our customers on addressing their business goals with technology.
Excellent. Thank you, everyone. So for the listeners, we're going to split this into three parts, and we actually have another guest speaker that will be joining us on some of these from Intel as well. So in this session, we're going to talk about sustainability. We're also going to be touching on security as a wake-up call, and then also shrinkage. So we're going to have a three-part series. But in this one, we're going to talk about sustainability. So Jane, I'm going to come to you first. What does this mean from your perspective?
Thanks, Rob. It's a really interesting area. We're seeing a lot of the retailers having a lot of pressure and commitments around sustainability goals, which of course is key to what we all need to be doing in the world right now, but also facing that operational cost challenge. So for me, it's really kind of that interesting weigh up of doing the right thing, but while you're being pressed so much on cost, how does that weigh up and how much impact is really happening at the moment around that?
So thanks for that, Jane. I think one of the key things here is how do we balance the goals versus the cost from that? So, I mean, Ian, what's your view on this?
I see this as one of the growing dilemmas and challenges, as well as opportunities that retailers have. We're seeing now that customers are starting to expect sustainability, so it has to become an agenda from a marketing and activation point of view, but also financing and funding any shifts that you have to do. And it's important to then work out what your realistic expectations are as a result of that investment. And this is one of the challenges that different retailers have, because different marketplaces and different sectors and industries will have different reactions and expectations for their customers. So understanding that is going to be critical. Otherwise, you'll be overspending or having expectations that are beyond the ability of the expenditure that you're putting in place.
So Ian, just on that, I'm interested in how do you as a retailer, or the retailers that you're talking to, how do they not just greenwash? How do they do something that's meaningful and has a longer term plan? Because it must be tempting to simply say we've used recycled paper, or we're using less plastic, or whatever it would be. Right, planted a tree, and it's all great. But I think honestly, consumers are wise to it now, and it feels to me like a lot of the real sustainability agenda is actually behind the scenes. It's not front of house all the time.
And that's a really good point, because the areas we've been getting involved in is looking at some of the actual energy consumption impacts. So looking at what the stores are actually consuming, the warehousing, etc., running some consumption reports on that. So driving the conversation of actually you've got 10, 15-year-old system in there. If you refresh that now, we're going to be able to save you 30, 40% of your consumption costs. So that creates some great metrics for them, but then it comes back to that challenge as well. But you're going to have to make some investment here in order to get that energy saving. So how do we weigh those two up?
And, from an energy saving perspective, when you're talking about, digital assets, whether it's, EPOS systems, computer systems, digital signage systems, where they come from matters so much now, because the physical logistics and the manufacturing, cycles that, bringing something from China or bringing something from Poland is obviously a significantly different journey. Yeah. And those carbon calculations are now intrinsic to the conversations that we're having about the whole life cycle of the product.
I think what's interesting as well, where you're seeing that transition from printed analog material to digital as well, you see the obvious benefit in that you can update content on a screen a lot more easily, quickly and cheaply. But then the technology and the materials used to create the screen are not as environmentally friendly. And the other thing that's often forgotten is the disposable afterwards. I've seen pictures of, whole piles of old screens. And I think the calculation is difficult because you have a higher environmental impact to create the technology, but it's more environmentally friendly to use. So it's not an exact like for like, because it's like how many, how often, how long will they last, how often you updating the content. So the calculation is not a simple binary calculation.
It's been a pressure point, actually. You can see screens in the marketplace now that have been installed for 4 or 5 years, and actually it's the end of their life, usable life. And they weren't really thinking, honestly, the manufacturers weren't really thinking around it too hard, especially with high brightness screens for use in window environments or other places like that. That's changing. So the manufacturers, the vendors are thinking more about 50% reductions of the electricity use for the same brightness. And other technologies actually coming into play as well now, like LED technology, which has a 10 or a 12-year lifespan over a LCD screen, which has a much, much less lifespan. And arguably, as you say, I mean, e-waste, it's still not as recyclable as it should be.
Yeah, and I think there's an important part about that overall circular economy in that conversation is you've got to think about that as part of that procurement process now. It can't just be, we're going to buy the thing that it looks the flashiest or, fits the space the best or, enables that consumer outcome. Actually, is there an option to procure something, like you say, that's got newer tech in it, and actually maybe even from an organisation that has a proper circular economy project built into that. So actually when you stop using it, maybe they can reuse it somewhere else in the world, because that extends that life and can help you with your carbon offset.
And let's face it, what matters here is the message. It's not the technology. The message matters. So I'm really encouraged by things like e-paper and the opportunity to create something as a message that drives a consumer behavior moment, but doesn't require me to power it all the time. And it could even be solar powered, and it's in color, and it uses power when it's changing the message, which might only be once a day or once a week, who knows. So I think the world is changing in terms of how people perceive the digital landscape, and flashy isn't always best, and it's still better than paper. The reality is the amount of water that you need to use to create paper is just insane, and it is one of the major pressure points that the world is going to face over the coming years, and we do need to move away from all the printed POS that we've got. Arguably, less messaging would be also a sensible move, but that's another conversation.
What's everyone's thoughts though on how people actually perceive this? So everyone says they want to be green, but do they actually follow through? And there's something we talked about in the event that we ran, earlier. It's what are people doing in reality in the world at the moment?
I love this topic because I always say you put a human into the mix and they'll ruin everything, because they're fickle, inconsistent, emotionally driven creatures. So you can design a perfect solution, they'll love it one day and the next day they'll hate it. And it's what's going on in their head or what they're trying to do that makes the difference. Everyone says sustainability is important. I get concerned about the way we do this research, and I've seen research studies that go 75% of customers will stop shopping with you if you're not sustainable. And a lot of the time that data is gathered by paying them £50, putting them in a nice warm room and giving them a cup of coffee and then going, is sustainability important to you? Because who's going to say no? So you're already biasing the response. Sometimes not deliberately, you're biasing that response. And in reality, I've seen reports say anything between 15 and 26% of customers actually act on what they say in those focus groups. And psychologists call it the intention action gap, the difference between what we say and what we do. And the reality is we all want to be, or most of us want to be sustainable, but you go in the shop and you're in a hurry, so you just buy what you normally do. Or the sustainable one is in a separate section at the back because they've got a special sustainable station and you just cannot be bothered to walk over there, or it's 10% more expensive. Or the signage to explain is complicated and you're in a rush, so you don't bother. There are a million reasons why we don't do the thing we say we do and we know we should. And that's the reality. And the rate of change will run at the rate that humans change their behaviour, not at the deadlines and the return on investment that shareholders expect from a retailer.
That makes sense.
I think it's a really good point, because it's almost having to weigh up what the consumer wants while meeting the sustainability challenge. So you're seeing it really well with the likes of Vinted and some of these other online brands where people can resell clothes, and they're doing fantastically well. And that's hitting both of those, that it's sustainable, it's recycling, and it's also a cost saving, which ticks all of those. But that's very hard to do on a big scale with a lot of these retailers, how they can offer both.
I mean, that recycled second-hand clothing market has now become cool as well.
Yeah.
And some of the stores you're seeing, the store environments are professionally designed. It's not just the empty floor rails and the load of old stuff. They're sophisticated spaces, so they're investing in it at the price point. I took my son, who's really into this, a couple of years ago to London to look at second-hand stores. And we found an Adidas T-shirt from the 70s, and the price was £30, which is the same price as the new one in the Adidas store. So it's not even a price premium. It's a value offer. It's feeling it's doing the right thing, and at the moment it's on trend.
Yeah.
So you're seeing that as well, which is growing the activity, which is helping that sustainable, recycled, upcycling offer anyway. And you're seeing more and more brands are investing. And I've always said every fashion store should have a permanent recycled category. You control the quality of your second-hand brand, you add revenue, you do the right thing, and you appeal to a potentially new target audience. I'm going, I cannot find a reason not to do it.
Surely that's a really important message actually to all retailers, that if they're not doing something visibly that's helping change consumer behaviour, because frankly, it needs to be at scale for it to have any impact. If they're not highlighting where consumers can make a change, it's not going to make any material difference, really. So I think it's really important that they're making it engaging, interesting, and it's easy to talk to Gen Z about this, and it's an on-trend, very desirable and easily marketable message. That doesn't apply everywhere. All demographics are not the same. So we do need to make sure that it applies across the board to all ages and all demographics, and that everyone's approaching it with the same vigor that you're talking about.
You need to communicate it clearly, and you need to do it for long enough for people to buy into it and adjust their habits. You know, you go into supermarkets, and a lot of them have packaging free. And remembering to bring packaging, boxes, your Tupperware along to refill will take time. What I really get annoyed with is when they will sell you the packaging there, a huge margin. They're profiteering off you forgetting to bring something while you're trying to do the right thing they're persuading you to do. And it makes no sense. They should sell the containers at cost if they're serious about encouraging you to change your habit. Because if I go, yes, I want to get those cereals or nuts, but I forgot my container, and they're selling you one for £10, I'm going to go and buy the packet for £2.50 in the next aisle. So you've got to step back and think like a customer when you're doing this. I always say to brands, take your Tuesday morning meeting head off and put your Saturday afternoon head off, because we all shoppers. You have the ability to think like this customer. Just forget about your KPIs and your deadlines and your shareholders and think like you do at the weekend. Because if I go in there and you're going to rip me off to try and do something that's different, I just won't do it.
And that's such a good point. And also, I think you touched on this earlier on in the event as well, about giving things time. Sometimes you see the stores just do something for, say, a 6-month trial, and it takes longer to change behaviour.
Yeah.
So I think it's that mix of making it as free containers or cost containers will drive that behaviour and that adoption, but give people time to catch up.
Know your audience.
Yeah.
Do you think?
Makes sense.
Do you think that the teams that work on this as well, I think they have a high turnover of people? And I've seen this over a number of different areas of engagements, and sustainability is one of them, where it's not a 3-year plan, it's a 1-year plan.
Yeah.
It's a 6-month measurement, to your point. And if it doesn't work, well, we'll move on to the next thing, because actually that's my career that we're talking about. And so it becomes quite personal to the people within these businesses. So it is incumbent on the brands to take a board level leadership decision at a 3 to 5 year viewpoint to make an impact across a number of key touch points, and not just do something for vanity or visibility. And it's easily done.
And I think that's incumbent in many areas of these organisations, is actually documenting that strategy. A lot of people have an idea in a boardroom somewhere, we're going to do this because we think it's good, but then it never gets written down. It doesn't get communicated through the hierarchy. People don't understand why they've been asked to do something. And we see exactly the same thing in the IT infrastructure space, is that, we're going on this journey to do something with infrastructure, but not everyone is clear on why they're doing it. What's the business outcome they're going to get from it? Why does it mean anything to me as an employee of the organisation delivering that piece? And actually, what is that end goal? Is it, you mentioned, Jane, before about refreshing old kit because it's more power efficient? And we can take that story into networking, into storage, into compute, into cloud, potentially as well, you know what I mean? And that all drives that sustainability angle. But if if the business isn't behind it, it's not going to happen. Not for the right reasons.
I've run innovation workshops for years, and innovation is one of those words, a bit like sustainability. It gets bandied around a lot and abused. And I love what you say there, because if you're trying to do something new, you need endorsement from someone senior. It's a seal of approval, and it gives you that opportunity to justify why you're doing it when other people are maybe resisting. It needs to be clearly communicated to understand what it is, but why. And then you need to then look at, because the problem is a lot of these activities are siloed and may require different teams. I think with retail media networks, for example, the budget to execute comes from 2 or 3 different departments. So suddenly, instead of you being in charge of your spend, you're contributing with others. So you need that mix. You need to be prepared for it not to work first time. Because the moment you do something new, the failure rate goes up. Embrace the failure rate, because you can learn as much from the failure as the success. And it's a whole ecosystem of culture that you need to implement when you're trying to do anything that is a big shift from what you're used to doing. And it will take time.
Excellent, Ian. And I think that's a fantastic closing piece from yourself. But I'm going to just come to the rest of the audience here and just get your last thoughts. What is the one takeaway you'd give to everyone who's been listening to this from a sustainability angle? Peter, what are your thoughts?
I think it's easy to get bogged down with this. I think there's a lot of very depressing stories that can drive this agenda. But, it's also a really positive opportunity to implement meaningful change across the business and to drive cost savings, improve the well-being of staff, to help consumers make a difference in the decisions they're making, and to also improve the whole outlook of the store environments that you're working in physically. There's lots of opportunities to create reusable environments and make that part of the customer journey that's embedded in the whole brand ethos.
Excellent. Jane, what are your thoughts?
I think for me, it's sustainability is just so key to CDW and to all of us here. So it's to have those conversations with us. We know the impact of technology has on consumption and energy. We're doing some really smart stuff around that, and how we can maybe help retailers make the changes with looking at kind of, there's a cost involved. How can we do that from an OPEX point of view to really help offset that? So we're doing the right thing, and we're helping you meet your goals. And we want to make an impact. We want to make difference, but we've got to start making real change now.
Excellent. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. It's been a fantastic discussion. Thank you for everyone who's listening. Don't forget to join us for the second part, where we're going to talk about security in the retail sector. But for now, I've been Rob Sims, Chief Technologist for CDW.
Ian Scott, Independent Retail Consultant.
Peter Critchley, UK CEO for Trison.
Jane Liston, Retail Sales Manager.
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode. Be sure to check out the back catalogue for more great insights. Don't forget to subscribe via your favourite podcast platform so you never miss an episode. We appreciate your support, and if you have a topic you want us to cover, feel free to reach out. Catch you next time.